Hey, this is Malachi, Church versus State. Diplomatic immunity. We've all heard that one, haven't we? But it's kind of like one of these things that people go, well, what is that really? Well, what it means is that if you're a diplomat of America, meaning you're one of the people that speak for your country, when you go into another country, it's somewhat illegal. Well, you don't have to really abide by their laws. Okay, you respect their laws, you're supposed to acknowledge their laws, but in reality, you are held to the laws of your land, not their land. That's the simple of it. It can be more complicated, but that's the simple of it. Okay. Now, let's think about this as Christians. I'm finishing up a video called, I don't know what I'm going to call it, but it was about being baptized. Anyways, so when you're baptized and you're born again, aren't you now a diplomat and have diplomatic immunity under God? And now you're part of the family of God. You no longer belong to the state, the government. You know, Abraham, even though he was in the land of Canaan and places like that, and they went into Egypt and so on and so forth, they still had diplomatic immunity. They weren't bound by those laws. I mean, they respected the land. They were good people. They worked together as far as what they acknowledged from each other. If, you know, when Jacob was in a land and he made a deal with the ruler next door, and you know, he said, "Hey man, if I can be here, what do you want?" He says, "Well, I want this, that." Okay, fine, that's it. But when they had inner issues, meaning that was a problem with Jacob's kids. They went into, I can't remember the kingdom, but they caused little problems, and then Jacob had to deal with them, and so on and so forth. But in reality, they were their own people, and they had their own laws. And so, over the years, you know, countries have acknowledged that by other countries. But however, people within those countries, like let's say us in the United States, we have, well, obviously we're a melting pot of a lot of different people from a lot of different nations. So we're a land of many nations, but we also have a lot of different people that believe different things. So, of course, in 1913 or whenever it was, you know, this whole UCC thing and maritime law and all this kind of stuff, and everybody becoming a corporation. What it did is it took our free nation of people being free, really all the issues that were legal issues, besides the when you did business in a land or something like that, fell under a lot of family issues. Families would deal with families, unless you know, broke a law, stole from a business. You know, if you stole from a bank robber, they would put a warrant out for you, and you'd have somebody come and get you. And then you were obviously you're judged by that other person. But other than that, you still had rites of passage. You still were able to travel. You still were able to build whatever house you wanted to build on your own land. You were able to actually own land outright. You still had certain aspects of personal diplomatic immunity or family immunity, things like that. They respected the family. Okay, but nowadays there's no respect for family, and there's really no respect for those who have, you know, religious beliefs. And you always hear this, you know, the reasons why they don't do certain things is because, you know, they'll always use, well, there's the Jim Jones people, like if it's religion, oh, there's Jim Jones people, oh, they'll go out and kill each other, they're the cult. Well, you know what, I hate to tell you this, but there's always been cults, there always will be cults. I mean, read your Bible. You know, there's been so many, there's Baal, for crying out loud. People worshipped him. They're the Canaanites who worshipped him. I mean, there's so many pagan gods out there that could be considered by many and considered by me to be cults. So, what's the difference? See, this is the thing, as a Christian, you know, a lot of times Christians just sit back and don't do anything. They don't want to get in confrontation. They don't, it's like church versus state. They say that we shouldn't be a part of the state. Well, let me tell you something. If you're not involved, they are. You often wonder how come it's never Christian values that are brought forth in the community or stood up for and with our local government or political powers that be. How come they're not supporting Christian values? Because Christians are getting involved. You know, I've done a video about Billy Graham. I feel that once Billy Graham dies, the veil blessing America is going to be gone. You know, I don't put him higher than anybody else, but I'm just saying, at least out of some of the people, he was one of the leaders that was willing to be a part of the system. You like him or not. A lot of people like to, you know, start pigeonholing everything. Oh, he was this, or he was that, or he was in the Masons, or whatever. You know, who the hell cares? You know, the thing is that he has to deal with his issues that he made when he meets God. You know, yeah, we are to be watchers and be aware, but you also have to understand that God's word is never in vain. So back to the diplomatic community. So the reason why I bring this up, because John Kerry has gone over to Russia and started telling them some deadline of something. I haven't read the whole article yet. But, you know, John Kerry's diplomatic community, when he goes over to Russia, Russia would be, it's just like Moses when he went into the Pharaoh. He had diplomatic immunity. Pharaoh wasn't going to do anything to him. In reality, he could have, but he didn't. He didn't for a couple reasons. One, it was his brother, stepbrother, and two, he knew that he was an Egyptian. He'd been gone forever, and you know, he knew he had immunity in that way, so he was able to freely speak his mind. It wasn't until he gave the last plague of killing the firstborn that he told Moses, "Next time I see you, I'm going to kill you." So it took a few plagues to get to that point. I believe it was 10 of them. So, but however, this ties into my baptism video too, and you need to watch that. It's a little longer, but it covers the whole thing. Is that when you are baptized and born again as a Christian, and you have a certificate of baptismal, now your ownership of God's. You're no longer owned by the land. You're not owned by the state. You're not owned by Caesar. You're not owned by anybody. Not a Pharisee, not a Caesar, not a president, not nobody. They don't own you. You have diplomatic immunity. The one that owns you is that guy up there. He owns your spirit and your soul. Now, the world may lay claim to your body, because that's what they like to do. That's what they've been doing now for a long time. That's why your Social Security, you have a Social Security number. They want to lay claim to you. That's why they put all these laws on you, because they want to lay claim on you. Why is it that when Mexicans see this whole thing with people that don't like illegal aliens coming in America? Well, here's the one thing about them. Maybe you should look at it from this point. Now, I don't agree with it either, you know. So, but I'm also not going to beat them up over the side of the head. I just would ask them politely to learn to speak English a little bit better. But nevertheless, the reason why, you know, they get away with what they get away with is because they're not from this country. They have to be deported back to their own country and fall under their laws. And so when they go back, their country is like, meh, whatever. They don't care. And then that's why they come back. They keep coming back. They keep sending over. They keep coming back. Keep sending over. Hey, you know, in reality, they got a good deal. Same way with the American Indians, you know. They're judged by their own tribe, and that's how it's supposed to be. We as Christians, it should be the same thing. It should be as a tribe. Now, unfortunately, they put tribes on reservations, which is total bullshit. But, you know, I remember there was an incident in Washington. I was talking with my sister, and there was an Indian woman that was, I guess she was taking meth or something like that, but she left her kids in the car, and one of her kids died, and this whole thing. And my sister was upset because she was going to be judged by the tribe and not by the court of law. And I said, well, I understand why you're upset, but you also have to look at it from this aspect too. They are their own nation, and they have their laws, and their laws should be, whether you accept them or not, it's irrelevant. It's not our place to say what is right and what is wrong, because they're not our nation. They have their own nation. They're supposed to be judged by their own people. That's the same thing that we have, and we forgot about that as Christians. We are supposed to be our own. As God said, the land that you see is yours. He never put up fences with his people. He says, you know, there's the whole thing with Abraham and Lot. Remember, you go left, I'll go right. You know, Lot chose the path of milk and honey, basically. But there was never any boundaries. It was you use what you see, and you take what you see, and you respect everybody you meet in between. If you come into a town and they have certain laws, as you're in that town, you obey their certain laws. But there's certain aspects on which they can't control you. Just as the Native Americans, they still have to, if they come speeding through a town and it's outside of their area, they're still going to have to deal with that issue as well. But however, the ultimate judgment is with their people. And the same thing as Christians. And that's another secret that's been put into this whole system, is we have all these different denominations. Well, all these different denominations of basically the same thing have caused confusion too. So where does one, if one's picked up somewhere and they say, well, I'm a Christian, then it's almost like I'm a Mexican, deport me. No, or I'm an Indian, I go to the tribe of so-and-so, okay? Send me there, I'll be judged there. No, so when you get pulled over, I guess let's just say pulled over in some local place, and you say, I'm a Christian, well, where are they going to take you? See, that's the problem. But if you say to them, I'm a born-again Christian of this family, you know, I come from the tribe of Israel, and then, okay, well then, if it was done how it's supposed to be done, and that's because we've all fallen asleep, Christians have just, you know, not gotten involved in politics, they've allowed Caesar to start to rule again, and the laws of Caesar are still in place now as they were back 2,000 years ago. Enslaving and in bonding, all of us. And we're sitting here asleep going, okay, man, I don't mind being a slave. Why don't you wake up? God gave you this land. God gave you a lot of power. You belong to Him. Start thinking about this stuff. Start waking up to these certain facts. As a Christian, as a person that's baptized, as one that's repented, baptized, and given himself over to Christ, is reading His Word, you are now ownership of God. Okay? That He has the ultimate judging. That's why at the end it's a white throne judgment. He always has the end all be all. He's the one that finalizes everything. Man thinks he can judge you here on earth. He has no clue. And in reality, during the millennium, a lot of the ones that are judges during the millennium time are those that are killed off now. It said those who were beheaded were given white robes, and they sat on thrones and they judged. So God even gave power to those who believed in Him prior to the millennium, who lost their head because they did stand up for what God was saying. They're the ones who were judging the people then. But ultimately, even after that, God has the final judgment, and that's a white throne judgment. It comes at the very end. A long ways away from that. But however, what I'm trying to say to you now in this, and hopefully I've been able to say it, is when you repent and are baptized, and now you have a certificate of this, you are now a child of God's. And you need to start figuring out how to actually put back the power that should be there. And you need to start trying to explain to your children and people around that they do have rights. They have rights that God gave them. And these rights overrule any other rights. It's like federal overrules state and so on and so forth. But then you have state. That's all. They don't even. States don't even know any. States don't even know that they have certain rights over federal. But federal is more of a person. You have a right to travel between states. You know, this is why when you cross the state line to another state, you don't have to now get new tabs on your car or re-register your car in that state. But if you're in that state for too long, then you have to do it. Okay? Or you know, if you commit a crime in Arizona and you flee to New York, New York will send you back to Arizona. That's the way it's always been. But it used to be, if you were part of the family of Jacob and you did something, well, then you'd come back to Jacob and he would figure out what was your punishment. Go back to even Moses when he was setting all the laws. The same thing applied there. Children of Israel, he was giving them the boundaries on which they would be able to judge their own. But we've lost all that in America as Christians, because everybody's sitting back, too afraid to say anything. Churches are, oh, here's my 501c3 status. Well, screw that. If that dictates to you what you have to do or say or puts you in fear, then, you know, just close shop. You might as well just hang a sign that says, I worship the state. You know, give your life to God, for crying out loud. Because now you're all only worried about money, and whose face is on the money. That's why Christ said, render to Caesar's what is Caesar's. He didn't just say, oh, pay your taxes because you're supposed to. No, he says, if your main focus is money, and that's your God, then have at it. Go worship that, because in the end it's not worth nothing. So, as a Christian, as a born-again Christian, as one that believes, has been baptized, you're now a child of God, and in reality, in all reality, though nobody will ever acknowledge it, at least now, but we can start making them acknowledge it, that you're now a child of God, and you fall under His rules that are written in the Word, and not man's rules. Anyways, it's Malachi Church vs. State signing out. Hopefully you understand what I just said. I will try to get more in depth and get my thoughts more wrapped around it. I just said this because I saw that article. Support my music ministry if you can, because that's how I live. And call your mom, hug your kids, go see a neighbor, get involved in the community, go to a school board meeting. I mean, that's where all the hell's happening, and I'm going to do another video on that too, I think tomorrow. But anyways, run for office, please. You know, you don't have to stay there forever. Just run for office, see what it's like. You might win, you may not win. You still know what it's about. You learn something. And if you do win, so what that you don't know everything? You learn. You're grounded as a good Christian person, and you'll make judgments based on what God tells you to do. And that way you help move things forward in a positive way for everybody. Church vs. State, Malachi signing out. Subscribe. I'll talk at you later. Bye.